I'm Sheetal Davitt. Thanks again for coming tonight. We're really excited about being able to participate in this important committee. And as Dr. Wendy said, what Dr. Wendy Andrews said, it's really important for us to be here as part of industry. And you know, without much ado, I'll just let the panel go through and just give you guys can give a quick brief overview of who you are, what your role is, and a little bit of your background.
Ladies first.
Hello, my name is Zhang. I'm Vice President of Quality and Regulatory Affairs for Lutronic. My responsibilities are to strategic planning and implementation of aesthetic, ophthalmic, surgical, laser, surgical light-based medical devices for global markets. I'm also in charge as a management rep for compliance to continuous quality improvements and environmental regulations from the notified bodies. I've been with Lutronic for almost 10 years. I have a certificate in clinical research from Johns Hopkins, a bachelor's from Tufts University, master's from University of Connecticut, and a doctorate from Virginia Polytechnic Institute.
Hi, I'm Marina Kamanakis. I'm with Syneron Candela. Currently, I am the VP of Marketing for their aesthetic products. I have had over 20 years of experience in the laser industry. So basically, I grew up in this environment. My roles span from international to marketing to clinical study management and full circle back to marketing. I enjoy every aspect of this business. I enjoy the product development, and I feel privileged to be surrounded by these wonderful panelists. So thank you.
Hi everybody, I'm Gloria Janata. I'm the president of Togo Run, as well as Vega Run, and we're healthcare, aesthetics and beauty, public relations and communications company. And I've had the pleasure of working in the medical aesthetics field for about 20 years or so, starting off back in 2003, just when Botox was sort of coming onto the market, and had the good pleasure of working with the folks at Allergan at that time for about 10 years as the head of global communications at an agency I was at then. And so that was a lot of fun, and then also had the pleasure of working with all my friends at Solta Medical, also as head of global communications for a couple of years and now as well. And thrilled to be here. I think that it's a very interesting and dynamic field, obviously, aesthetics, especially for women, because as we all know, it's not about vanity, it's about reality, and I think that that's one of the things that we're always sort of making sure that we're communicating in terms of us really being able to feel as, feel as good as we look and look as good as we feel. And so delighted to be here, and thank you, Sheetal, for inviting me.
Hi, I'm Kalia Mendel. I'm from Luminis, from the industry. I'm actually pretty new to the industry relatively to the rest of the panel here. I'm working for Luminis for the past 3.5 years. I have a master's in material engineering, and I worked for different kind of industries before, the semiconductor industry at the beginning, and then the industrial printing industry for a while, but I always wanted to work for a medical device company. This is what I did with my studies and my research. So I got the opportunity to work for Luminis. It's a great company with a lot of innovations, and this is part of the best part of the job. I'm currently in the marketing. I'm a product manager for all the non-ablative systems that we have, and I'm honored to be here. So thank you for inviting me.
I'm Constance. I also belong to Luminis as my friend Kalia. I'm Global Clinical Training and Development Director. I've been with Luminis for the past 19 years. It's very funny because I started with an MA, so what am I doing here? I continued with a British MSc and a French PhD, so a kind of complicated story. it was a PhD in industrial control systems. So my future was not driven to enter the medical environment. However, I entered by accident in the medical environment. I was playing with lasers since I was almost born, so I had no real problems with lasers, light-based energies. But about medical applications, it was kind of a complete unknown environment for me. And I started 19 years back. I'm still there, so apparently I seem to enjoy it, and I do enjoy it. And yes, it's what's absolutely exciting about this industry is the innovation, the fact that you keep on learning. My dream would have been to be a lifetime student. Unfortunately, no one can afford it. But I feel like I'm still being a lifetime student because you keep on learning every day, and you need to learn. And as Kaya said, thank you also for inviting me. I'm not used to this kind of panels. I'm more feeling confident when training on lasers and providing some educational material for lasers more than talking about myself, but thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Vladimir Paul Blanc, and I'm the general manager for Solta Medical. Before I go any further, I want to thank Sheetal personally for not telling me I'd be the only male person on this panel. So I appreciate that. Good transparency. No, so I've been with Solta now for about 13 years, and it's been a blessing. I've been fortunate enough to have worked in a lot of different areas, whether in clinical, marketing, R&D, international sales management, now as the general manager. My background, I hold a bachelor's degree in biology from Brown University. I've done some post-bac work at Johns Hopkins in biomedical engineering. And I think, you know, my perspective on this event is very personal. So when I joined Solta 13 years ago, I was one of the first clinical trainers for Fraxel. And the first 20 clinicians who I had the joy and pleasure of working with were all female laser dermatologists and plastic surgeons. And having watched the field evolve, I think it just makes the perfect sense for us to participate and hopefully continue to support this type of an event. So I hope, you know, my commentary, my perspectives can help contribute to this evening. But I do want to commend Dr. Anders and the society for stepping up and doing this, because I think it is critical to the future of the business, the future of the society, and the future of the specialty. So thank you.
Do you want to just introduce myself? Sure. So Wendy's asked me to introduce myself as well. So as we said, my name is Sheetal David. I am Director of Marketing for Solta Medical. My experience and my background is a little bit different. I went to college and I majored in business and economics, and my parents told me not to become a doctor because they thought it'd be really hard for me to make some money, but they told me I had to do something good to give back to the community. So they told me to go into pharma. So I've worked in my entire career in the pharma world. I started in internal medicine, working through sales and marketing and sales leadership, and kind of have grown through various organizations. About 2 years ago, I joined Valiant, working on the injectable business, and when we diversed the business over to Galderma, Vlad had asked me to come over on his side of the business. So it's been a great learning opportunity for me. And then last year, when I met Dr. Anders at the event, I had said a lot of comments about how I thought it was really important for us to do more for women in the industry. And I had mentioned that I thought it'd be great for us to be included. And so the next thing I know, she reached out to me and asked me to help panel this. So I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for putting the honor into my hands. I really appreciate it.
And I'm Wendy Friedrich, and again, I am nervous about being on this panel, and my perspective is also from a different background. So I am a clinical studies manager at Lightcure, and I started off in research. I have a bachelor's degree in physics and a PhD in material science. I did basic research and then went to industry and did some industrial research. And then I took off 20 years from working in industry and raised my children and did other volunteer and other things that kept me very busy. And in the past 5 years, I have worked to get back into the workforce, and I have been working for Lightcure for the past 3 years, which I really enjoy. And I'm doing different working with, liaison with R&D and marketing and sales. And just so I appreciate, I was here last year with Dr. Anders, and she said that we needed more industry on this panel, and so I appreciate her giving me the opportunity to work with these people. Okay.
Okay, so let's get down to the nitty-gritty here. So my first question is, diversity and gender bias, it's a real deal. It's a real topic. And I think that's why you guys are all here, is to help us kind of understand your perspectives. So Vlad, I'll just start with you. Have you ever found that, gender or diversity has kind of discouraged you in your interest in science, in math, kind of taking on the role into a leadership position? And how did you overcome this?
Great question. Thank you for choosing me first.
No worries.
Look, I think it's obvious. I'm a person of color, and in my role as a business manager, I'm the only person in color in my role at Valiant. So obviously, I think, whether it's a gender issue or a race issue or an age issue or a socioeconomic background issue, I think, in this world, in this industry, in this profession, there's always going to be moments in time where you feel as though, yes, there are challenges because of what I look like, who I am, and where I came from. And I definitely feel, there's going to be some of those incidents that happen. I think the most important thing, though, is how you deal with it. I think for me, personally, my fire, my drive was driven by a strong family background and support network. I think those are critical pieces. And it's not necessarily, just having someone to call, but knowing that there's someone there to support you. I had a mentor who was in human resources at Solta, who probably gave me one of the single biggest pieces of advice. She told me, you should really think about creating a personal board of directors for you. Someone who you can speak to about your financial guidance, someone you can speak to about your career guidance, someone you can just call when you're having a bad day. And I think that's something we can all relate to. And for me, again, it's kind of what I always go back to, regardless of, how successful or how bad a day or how things are projecting. Having that personal board of directors to guide you has made a tremendous difference in my experience.
That's a great idea. Any other panelists, any thoughts on that? I'm sure we've all experienced or felt like we've experienced it.
Well, gender bias is everywhere. Is it overt? Probably not. But in the world, we could be looked at differently because of the way we look, the way we speak, the accent we have. It could be a variety of reasons. But I think the biggest problem is trying to differentiate overt versus covert gender bias. And I think as women, especially in the male-dominated industry, there are times that we're not always invited to the table. And what I mean by that is that there's activities within a boardroom and conference room, and there are also activities that are after hours or where business conversations can take place. I think sometimes it's difficult for us to be included everywhere. So our role is to find a balance on how do we manage this aspect of our career to be actually somebody who contributes positively without the total inclusion. And I think that really needs us to be courageous and tenacious and not give up and move forward in the best way we can and positively contribute to the situation.
I think that's great, Marina. I totally agree. And from an overt or covert standpoint, what's really interesting for me as the head of a company is the communications field and PR is really very much a woman's field. There's mostly women, in the roles, really in the roles of doing all the work. A lot of the folks that own the companies are mostly men, so we recognize that. But when I came into the position as president, I said, well, we're going to make sure that all of our women are, equal pay for equal work. I'm a big believer in that, and set out and said we're going to make sure that we do this. And lo and behold, you do have to take time to really look at it, because when I look then at our roles, and we have several men that are at our company, I actually was shocked to learn that there was a problem with pay equity, that men were being paid more than the women in the same roles. And it wasn't until I, honest to God, looked at it and did it side by side to say, what was that actually, what were we actually doing, that I was able to say we've got to do something then to rectify that. So I think it's, you think that you're doing the right thing sometimes in your own practices, or how you're sort of paying, the people that you have working with you or for you. And I think you do have to make that extra role or extra step to look at it and then do something to rectify it. So it's covert, overt, as well as just something that you overlook sometimes. And I think that that's part of it as well. It's awareness, and it's then taking the steps to rectify that.
I think that there are traits that women generally are not emphasized, brought up, like things like self-assertiveness, self-promotion, and seeking opportunities. That just generally seems to be more common among men, but women tend to have a bit of more difficulty in asserting and going out for those opportunities and competing for those opportunities. So in that sense, I can see there is gender bias.
I can see. And that actually I agree with you on sort of that thing, and also having a good mentor, I think, is very important, as what you had said. And it brings us, the question I wanted to ask, actually this one we're going to do to Marina, of who were your best role models, mentors, or teachers that you might have had? And were any of them women?
Yes, actually, I had two men that I consider mentors and one woman. And I think my first mentor was the person who gave me the opportunity and hired me in the industry, because I don't have a science background. My background is in liberal arts. So he saw something in me that was trainable, coachable, teachable, and hired me in an industry that was young at that point, and basically mentored me to learn the ins and outs of the industry. And then my second mentor was a woman by the name of Judy Bednarz, who was an institution at Candela Corporation for many, many years. And she was very instrumental in really helping me learn the ropes of how to bring my ideas to fruition, how to basically develop a plan and sell it internally and bring it to fruition. And the last person that I would consider a great friend and a mentor was the chief technology officer in the last company that I worked with. We had this habit that at least once a week we used to have coffee together, and we used to talk about everything, whether is it how to ideas about product development, ideas about applications, but also ideas on how to bring this product to the market. So it was always a collaboration, and the brainstorming was amazing. And for me, what these three individuals really had in common is basically they gave me the validation that my ideas were really valid, and I was capable of competing in an environment that necessarily was not my forte, liberal arts major being in a science environment. And I think having people believe in me and giving me the opportunity to turn to them along my career helped me grow both personally and professionally.
Kalia, you have I relate to you a little for having a material science background, so I wonder about, have you ever experienced any, or how you have, in being the STEM background, and have you ever felt not encouraged or felt the only woman of?
Actually, not.
Not?
So I guess I was lucky enough. I studied the material engineering just because I'm from Israel. In Israel, you have the military service and you go to university only around 21 after you finish with the military service. And during my military service, I had a boss who was really a technologist, and he used to talk to me a lot about what I'm going to do after. And he sat down with me and he said, I always wanted to learn chemistry. I don't know why, but it fascinated me. And he said, no, you will get really bored. I'm telling you, go and study material engineering. This is for you. I'm telling you, you will be bored with all the molecule stuff. You need to learn the physics behind it. And he was right, because I studied material engineering, and part of it was chemistry, a lot of it was physics, and I really liked the physics. And this is why I also went to do the master's. And in my master's, I actually looked for someone in Israel which would give me the opportunity to do master's in material engineering, but related to medicine or medical devices, and this is what I end up doing. And since then, I guess that I rolled into different positions as engineer, my first position, and then I rolled over to marketing, because I had different bosses that saw something that they thought is something they need to develop more, and they pushed me to this direction, which I really like now, and I'm doing what I have to do. So it was great, and I was lucky with that. I can't say that that in Israel there are too many women in engineering positions, but I can say that in Luminis specifically 30% of the company are women, 30% of the management are women, and in my division, in the aesthetic division, actually 80% of people are women, and all the clinical persons are women, the engineers, all of us in the business unit, or also most of us are from the STEM, so most of us are engineers or some kind of science background. So I think our small circle is really something we can be proud of, and I didn't get into yet. Okay, I'm still young, but I didn't get to any limitations yet.
Go ahead.
So I've heard this a lot, that you're in your position because you're a girl. And I never take that as an appropriate statement or response to where I am and how I got to where I am. And that's me. And it sounds like there's a lot of, obviously, women that are in leadership positions. But what I'd like to know is, from the panel team, and maybe Constance, we can start with you, how do you deal with the perception that a woman got pushed into that role of leadership because she's a female, or a diverse, a person of diversity got pushed into that leadership role because of their diversity?
Honestly, I was never facing a situation in which, because you were a woman, you were more pushed into a leadership position. It's really a question of personality. It's a question of environment. It doesn't mean that, okay, if in very high-tech companies, you're going to have, of course, a majority of men. And more in communication or service industries and so on, you will find maybe a majority of women. Now, I was never in such a situation, to tell you the truth. We're talking before about mentors. I have to say, and I have to admit, that my mentors were mostly men. I was pushed, it was very funny, I was pushed by a math professor from university. He told me, Constance, I'm tired of you. You keep on asking why all the time. Go and study engineering. So I went and studied engineering. And I entered what is called in France, in my country, École d'ingénieur. It was automation, the field of specialty. And I was the only female amongst 50 guys. I thought, wow, great. I actually found it very interesting because obviously at the beginning, now I'm talking about 25 years back, I was considered as an animal of curiosity, certainly. But I was, at the end, I was given exactly the same chances. I started to work for the industry, industrial applications. I was working with the R&D team in a clean room. I was playing with excimer lasers, again, fully surrounded by men, no women around me. Was it nice? Was it not nice? Honestly, it was nice. It was nice mostly for this reason. When you're coming to a point of an argue at work, okay, men tend to forget it the next morning. Women, it's slightly different. Might be slightly different. Oh, I see my neighbor a little bit nodding. But I agree that you agree. Yes, you agree. So and this fits me. So this is probably also why my dad says to me, okay, I have 3 children, 2 boys, 1 girl, but probably the most boyish of my kids is my daughter. It's really dependent on the personality. Now, leadership is true, is different when you're a woman versus a man. Men tend to be, so I was doing some homework before coming here. I wanted to see what kind of papers, what newspapers and studies were saying about, okay, is there a difference between female and male leadership? And I found some things very interesting, actually, from Forbes magazine. And let me find it. Let me find it somewhere here. Yes. So it was an article, I think from 2004, I'm not sure, I think so. And so it was a kind of a survey about women's advantage as being leaders. And when questions on the advantages that women executives have over their male counterparts, there was a general consensus that women were often stronger in the fields of organizational ability. And this, practically speaking, I've seen it.
I would agree with that.
Anticipation, we're much better anticipators as men. Multitasking, this is because we have career number 1, which is usually a man. And the general propensity to put the team's welfare before the individual one. And when I was reading this, I said, wow, it might sound very harsh, but I was trying and figure out, practically speaking, if this applies to reality, and I had to say yes. So, no, it's just, I never found any kind of slowing down system here. It's the way you push your way into. There is definitely still some differences, and it's not being equal, but I think it's changing. Again, 25 years back, 1 female in École d'ingénieur versus 50 guys. I don't say now it's 50-50. It's about 10% versus 90% in industrial domain, but it's changing.
I think there's almost like I mean, for my case, I think almost like an unspoken. So when I was working in the poultry industry as a microbiologist, and I was the only Asian, I was the only female director, and whenever we had like management meetings, it made me feel like I had to push harder, strive harder, because not sure if I'm there because I'm meeting the quota or my capabilities. But I think it's always not having a support system in an environment like that. It's very difficult, especially when you're in meetings and the normal business talk would be talking about parts of chicken. The legs and the breasts, and just try to do a poker face. But I think there's always that is there some sort of self-doubt? What is is this a quota, or I have to push harder because I belong here?
Yeah, if I could just add to that, I think Constance made a really good point in terms of leadership. My experience in the last 13 years in the aesthetic space, typically when you walk into the boardrooms or the retreats and the meetings, they all look very similar, or they did look very similar. I think, obviously clearly evidenced by the people on this panel, that's changed. And as leaders, as managers, directors, presidents of organizations that have diversity across all different areas, I think the leadership tone and the style and what you expect of your teams are important. In the SOLTA boardroom, we have 13 leaders, 8 of which happen to be women. Not because they're women, but because they're the most talented people that serve on my team, as you can see. So I think, as we move forward, from the male perspective, it's all about putting together the best talented team. And you will find them regardless of who they are and what they look like. But for a corporation or a company or someone to say that my board has to look a certain way, I think just makes it unbelievably competitively disadvantaged. So that's how I see that. But I think Constance, you raised some really good points when it comes to the leadership piece.
Well, the other thing is that one can be appointed in a position, but if one is not capable or competent,
Absolutely.
One will not survive in the position,
Yep.
whether they're male, female. So I think it's the individual that really makes the difference.
Yep.
Agreed.
So I agree, and I think this is a really healthy conversation, and we could probably go on this for hours, but I do know our time ran out. But I think the key takeaways here are, regardless of your race, your gender, your network is super important. So always make sure that you grow your network amongst gender, amongst diversity. Having your own drive and your own tenacity are what are going to drive you and propel you forward in the areas of interest that you have. And, finally, I think mentoring. I know personally I've had mentors that are male, female, and of diversity, and that's always helped me. And I think if you look at, who your mentors are, making sure that you have a strong mentor list is going to help you propel forward.